Hello everyone, so in tuning I'm trying to achieve two main goals: accelerating sooner or more of the times than I'm braking, and making sure the wheels are in contact with the ground for as much time as possible. With that out of the way, let's start with alignment. I rarely touch the toe angle, especially on tarmac. Camber does this to the wheel, and that means as you take curves at high speed, your car leans and makes more contact with the ground, meaning you can take those corners at slightly higher speeds. But there's obviously a limit to this depending on the track, and the sweet spot for this is around here. I rarely adjust anything on the brakes since I can adapt to anything, but mostly because LSD braking lock on the differentials here affects the behavior of the car under braking much more. So the lower the setting, the more the car rotates under braking, and we do not need this since it's not a loose surface, so the setting is a bit high. In a normal car, the wheels move at different speeds while turning, since the wheels on the outside would be traveling a longer distance, so I reduced that effect by locking the wheels as much as possible so that one, the wheels slip a bit on those hairpins, not drift, but slip, so that the car rotates and faces the exit a little bit earlier so that I can hit the gas a little bit earlier. But this makes it tricky to drive, so this depends on your driving style. Speaking of driving style, I use gears to rotate the car and trail brake more than I use the brakes. So I prefer my LSD preload pretty high so that slipping effect of the high lock I set here still happens even when I'm off the gas. Then, similar to the way the wheels spin at different speeds during a turn, on Group B cars, the back wheels can also spin faster than the front wheels during a turn. And since we are not on a loose surface again, that is not necessary here, so I lock them as much as possible. And in most cases, front wheel drive is faster than rear wheel drive. That's why I push the torque all the way to the front. And if you look at my differential settings, they are more understeery than oversteery, because that allows me to get onto the power as early as possible, confidently, knowing that the car will not oversteer. Gearing has been tricky for this one because you can't spin the wheels when taking off on tarmac, which means the first gear has to be too powerful if you want the fastest takeoff, but that also makes it unusable for most of the track. So since I take off only once, I had to sacrifice my takeoff acceleration so that I use the first gear on those corners and hairpins. You really need to change anything on the final drive, but what it does is more torque, lesser torque. But then more torque also means you have to shift earlier, but if it's this side, you can stay in one gear for much longer before you need to shift while sacrificing a tiny bit of torque. So it's always a compromise, so the middle is usually the best. On to suspension now. Slow bump takes effect when the springs are compressed more gradually, like on these hills, and it also affects the roll of the car during curves, similar to anti-roll setting, as well as the weight transfer during braking and acceleration. Fast bump takes effect when the springs are compressed quickly, like when landing from jumps or when you hit a stone on a bumpy surface, and we don't have much of that here, so it's fine in the middle here. Bump division basically sets which bumps are considered fast bumps and which ones are considered slow, but I rarely touch this. Then I set slow rebound to maximum almost every time so that the springs revert back to normal size as slow as possible to make sure the car doesn't get thrown upwards after springs are compressed. So it basically helps the car stick to the ground. And then I put ride height on maximum, and that might sound counterintuitive since it's tarmac, but there are hills where the car almost jumps and the wheels almost leave the ground and lose a bit of traction. So I want the car to extend its wheels as much as possible to keep contact with the ground for as long as possible, and that's also why I set the spring rate very high. I also set the anti-roll bar low so that the body rolls instead, keeping the wheels more firmly in contact with the ground during high-speed curves, meaning I can go through those curves more confidently and faster. And I'm currently the one with the fastest Lancia time here, but don't take these values too strictly in case I'm wrong about a thing or two, but I hope my thought process will help you tune and make you faster. Tuning for more cars and maps are on the way, so be sure to subscribe to not miss that. See you on the next one.